Question number 1 that we're going to discuss today. And, for those of you sitting up here, if you have an answer, go ahead, grab the microphone. Don't fight over it, but take a turn at the microphone. I just love these 3. And so, I know, you have 2 men. And then go ahead and share with us your answer. And those of you sitting in the audience, take notes for yourself. But if you have something to share at the end, take notes and write down your thoughts, your additional comments to each of these questions, okay? Number 1, if opposites attract, how is it that it works? And when a couple has things in common, how is that it works? If opposites attract, how is it that it works? And if they have things in common, how does it still work? Good question. Because we see examples of both in society, where opposites attract and where people are just so much alike. It's like, wow. What do you guys think?
I think we all have answers, right?
Of course.
You might guess.
They all have answers.
Okay.
Panel discussion, right? So we're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Is this on? Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
It is. Okay. The answer that I have to this is that the question should really be, is the couple equally yoked? And I'm not speaking just about religion and temperament, because we always read about religion being equally yoked in religion in the Bible. But I am talking also about goals and expectations. And often the temperaments can be a bit different, but if their goals and their expectations are the same, then they're able to deal with more of the issues. Now, I personally feel like religion is probably number 1, because that affects every aspect of our life. But the goals and expectations that we have, if we don't discuss them first, we really don't know what we're getting into. For instance, and just a simple thing, if I expected my husband to take out the garbage and to do all the gardening, and he said his mother did that, then his expectation is that I do it. And there has to be a meaningful conversation, and communication is important, where each individual is willing to risk being misunderstood or having the other person get upset at them because of their position. Otherwise, you never really deal with the issues. Next.
Am I next?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the question is the same answer for both parts of the question. God's either in your marriage or he's not in your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And you can account for the 50% divorce rate by saying God wasn't in their marriage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you always find out that God's not in the marriage in the first few years. Sometimes it may take a couple decades
To discover whether God's really in the marriage or not.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And just to give you a little of my personal experience.
Hold the microphone closer to your mouth so those, yeah.
How's
perfect.
that?
Yeah.
I was married the first time for 12 years. My wife probably gave up and divorced me. It was probably the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But God wasn't in our marriage. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a common goal that we were sharing. Mm-hmm. So for my next marriage, which lasted 25 years, I made sure that we had a common goal. And it's got to be something that's bigger than the two of you.
That's good.
Just your kids, not big enough.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we spent the first 12 years working out various viewpoints that we had, and eventually settled on, okay, we have to leave Christianity for a while and find out about the roots of Christianity. So we studied the Torah for 19 years, and that brought us a lot closer together. She was Jewish. I didn't find out I was Jewish until after her passing, really. So I studied it from the standpoint of Christian with Christianity on hold. And I think that's what gave our second half of our marriage such a beautiful time together.
Mhm. That's good.
In fact, so every Sabbath, every Saturday, this is why I come to this church. You're worshiping on the right day. Every Sabbath, after listening to, I'll call him our rabbi, but I mean teacher, really. He's an ancient Hebrew linguist. So we go through the Bible with him, and he points out what the word originally meant, how it got changed around, what the possible meanings are, and you can pick whatever you like. So we would have discussions afterwards, and I would tell her what I thought. She would tell her what I thought, what she thought. And eventually it came to the place where she would say, this is when I love you the most.
Wow.
So my answer is, if God's not in it, good luck.
Right.
Good. I was looking at the original question. It has an assumption to it that opposites attract. I've said that different times
That's a very good point.
with friends
Yeah.
and family, and I thought, I wonder if that's an assumption that isn't. So I looked that up and did a little research on it. Actually, a lot of studies have said that's not true. It isn't that opposites attract. I mean, we see certain things and we sort of have confirmation bias, like, oh, so that's a thing, opposites attract. And actually in marriage counseling, as I've thought that through, and this helped me do it, relationships work better the more you have in common.
That
That
makes
doesn't mean
sense.
you have to be the same person,
Right.
and that can cause conflict too. But I think it's worth asking, do opposites attract, or is that just something that's kind of a cute thing to say? I mean, I've said it before because I'll have a friend or a pastor or somebody and think, oh boy, I'm an introvert, he's an extrovert, and obviously two people are never going to be the same.
Right.
But ask yourself, is your spouse that much opposite of you? With some things. And actually, that may be some of the hardest things you have to work on. When
Yeah.
couples don't have things in common after life, you're agreeing with me. Yeah.
We all agree with
Yeah.
you. This is
So-
very good.
I think Brad, Johanna,
Yep.
I mean, obviously you're different people,
Right.
a man and a woman, right? I mean, but
Right.
are you that much different? More like than when you first met.
Yeah.
So she's changed you. Is that right? You're a good boy now.
He's a
Yeah.
good boy.
Okay. Anyway, it's something to think about.
Right.
I don't think opposites attract that much. It's just that when they do, that gets emphasized, and then we.
Yeah. Interesting. You see, this is the first question. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think that often when opposites do get married, they tend to bring balance to each other. If one is an introvert and the other one's an extrovert, they tend to tone each other down a little bit. However, when you get two that are introverted or two that are extroverted, they're likely to be doing their own thing all the time and not expanding out as much as they might have if they'd have been a little different.
That's interesting. And this is a great example. The one question only and four with four different perspectives. But how valuable is that? The scriptures say in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. And that's what we're enjoying here today. And I want to add, especially for those of you listening online and those of you here, the input of these three individuals, even though they are a part of Hope Bible Fellowship, they do not represent an official Hope Bible Fellowship position on these things. These are simply a dialogue, a discussion we are all having to gain and to grow. So I should have said that earlier, but I do want to add that now. Question number 2. How do two competitive people in a relationship and in the same occupation make a relationship work besides compromise? Two competitive people in a relationship and in the same occupation make a relationship work besides compromise. If anybody has an answer, go for it.
I have the same answer.
You did just.
I have the same answer.
Yeah.
However, well,
The same answer is if God isn't in it, good luck. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I wrote down is that if you don't have compromise, it won't work.
Gotcha.
When I try to get couples to communicate and resolve conflicts, I let them know there's going to be some things you can't both have your way on.
Right.
You can't both buy the car and not buy the car. So, well, maybe we'll buy a cheaper car, or hey, I got my wish last week on what I wanted. I'll give you your wish this week. And that takes two adults having hard discussion, and two thinking people will strongly disagree.
Huh.
And that's where the conflict resolution skills come in.
Huh. That's good.
But anyway, I'll let them talk, and maybe I'll add something.
Sounds good. I like this.
The first thing I'd like to say is I want to focus on the word competitive, because competitive means somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. And when we have this attitude that one of us has to lose, we already are defeated, because when one loses, you both lose. And I feel like when one wins, you can both win if you take out of your mind this attitude that somebody has to win. I think the first thing in competition is to learn to be a good loser. And the second one is to be happy with the other person's success, knowing that if they're successful, they are happier, and therefore you will be happier too, because you are one. I think that we need to expect the best of our spouse and even help them succeed, so that if it means I sacrifice a little bit to help my spouse succeed, then I should make that sacrifice, knowing that if they succeed, they're going to be happier. It makes me think of many of you remember seeing a race where two people were it was a lot of people going around the racetrack, but the first and second person were close to the finish line. The second person twisted her ankle and fell. And the first person went back and helped her up, and they both went across the finish line at the same time. The crowd just went crazy because they both won. Yeah. And I think that the idea that we have to compete against each other is kind of self-defeating. In fact, I talked to my son Steve about some of these questions over the telephone, and his definition of success said, you have to recognize that competition brings out the worst in us.
Very interesting. Wow. Yeah, see, all these
good.
Different angles. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lambright.
No, I think that's one of the things I'd written down. The goal is to get a win-win rather than a win-lose.
Right.
Which is sometimes more attitudinal than,
Right.
because you can't both do one of those without compromising.
Yeah. Very good.
But if we argue this through, and sometimes those will be very strong arguments, call it what you will, those are arguments. And there are better ways to argue than not, of course. when you start throwing things like a fit, that's not a good thing to throw.
That's not a good way.
But one of the tripods I try to get couples to work through, one of the most basic conflict resolution skills is know your needs,
Know your needs.
know how to ask,
Know how to ask.
and the word is ask, not tell.
And the word is ask, not tell.
Whenever I hear adults telling each other what they're going to do, you're way off your game.
Huh.
Would you mind, would you think of, would you consider, I'd like this,
Huh.
using I language?
Mm-hmm.
Could we,
Mm-hmm.
don't think you're going to go out with the guys Friday night. We're going, no, that's parent-child stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would you consider not going out with the guys because, we did talk about,
Yeah.
so know your needs, know how to ask for them, and then do ask.
And do ask.
And again, it's ask, not tell.
Not ask, not tell. Huh, that's good.
And any one of those three can be difficult depending on how you were reared.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you were reared not to have needs,
Yeah.
so not ask for them.
Hmm.
Or maybe you're only allowed to be glad and nobody in the house dares be disagreeable or sad. So do you know what your needs are first?
Huh.
And that can be difficult.
Huh.
Do you have the words or the vocabulary for it? Do you know how to ask?
Yeah.
And then thirdly, which means you get beyond some of your fears, depending on who you're married to and how you've been trained, will you take the risk to ask for what you want, need,
Wow.
desire? Any one of those three that don't happen is a breakdown.
Huh.
It's so simple and so difficult to
Yeah.
know what you need.
Huh.
In this moment, do you know what you're feeling? Do you know what you're thinking? Do you know what you want?
Huh.
Do you have words for them?
Huh.
And then thirdly, will you lean in, take the risk, stir the pot to actually put it out there? And part of that is nobody is responsible for what you want. No one's responsible to know what you want
That's true.
except you.
Mm-hmm.
Hard stop. Well, we've lived together for 20 years. You're supposed to know what I want for dinner. Well, if I know that, maybe you're not growing.
That's a good point.
So, we're at Thanksgiving dinner, and everybody knows when Grandpa comes to dinner, he's going to say things like, "Well, I don't know. I like the turkey, but it needs something," which is code word for pass the pepper.
Pass the pepper.
Well, Grandpa, what would you like?
Uh-huh.
Well, I want salt. But you see, couples do this all the time. You're
Right.
supposed to know what I want.
Yeah.
And if you don't want, you must not love me.
Huh.
Take full responsibility
Huh.
for everything you say, do, think, and feel. Hard stop.
Huh.
No kind of, sort of, 99%.
Huh.
That's getting to win-win
Yeah.
if we'll both agree that I'm not going to assume you want me to listen to you and do something. If you want me to do something after you've complained about your day at work, then you ask for me to call your boss. Well, you're supposed to know that. Why aren't you doing something? No, that's kids in a sandbox.
Uh-huh.
Know your needs and how to ask for them and do. And don't assume you know what I want. Maybe I did want pepper last time I was here. Train that person how to live with you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's
excellent. I like
really
that.
good.
I like that.
Man, any more? Okay, number 3. What are some ways you can identify bad people? This is the question that the youth posed. What are some ways you can identify bad people? Or dangerous people, I suppose. Look at her handing.
Bad people, I suppose, means probably, well, anybody that you don't like or is bad for you.
Right.
Well, as I thought about this one, I thought, why don't you start with, do you know what good qualities are
Ooh,
in
that's
people?
good. Yeah.
I think
very
if you
good.
start there, and I started making a list and finding words for good qualities in people, then ask yourself on this list, how many of these am I willing to not have in a person,
Okay, that's
and to
good.
what degree?
Yeah.
I mean, like, what are the things you really consider good people to be like,
That's good.
or toxic people?
Uh-huh.
How do you know that they're bad people if you don't know what good qualities are?
Huh.
So,
Yeah, that's very good.
so I know probably we won't be able to hear you probably, so I don't know if this will work. But Brad and Johanna, when you were dating in college, I think, yeah, when you were still in college, of course, yeah.
Right.
Did you look for bad qualities or good qualities? The
Yeah.
best qualities.
Yeah.
And if on that list, if Johanna didn't have enough of them, or just some of them, or degrees of them, then you made a hard decision,
Yeah.
right?
Huh.
I understand if she had really bad qualities, that would stand out.
Uh-huh.
But start with what the good qualities in people are,
Uh-huh.
and then work backward.
Huh. That's good.
that.
Yeah, that's good. That's like
Excellent.
recognizing a genuine $100 bill versus a counterfeit. Know what is the real.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just felt like when I read this that we can't identify bad people quickly. It takes time. And it's like any relationship, it takes time. And it's with time that we're able to observe the fruits of their life. We're able to observe the friends that they choose. We're able to observe how compassionate they are. If they have a sense of humor. I love the doctor's sense of humor. Also, what do they laugh at?
Yeah.
Do they laugh at people? Do they laugh at religion?
Huh.
Do they laugh at the good things? Or do they laugh at themselves sometimes?
Huh.
And the other thing is, I think we need to recognize, as Jim has pointed out, God has given us the ability to ask Him to discern. The one thing that I wanted to finish with was Psalm 1:1-6, where we are counseled, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff, like the wind that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. But the way of the wicked will perish. And I think that if we ask God to give us discernment to be able to tell whether a person is a good person or a bad person, He will do it. I have come close to people who I couldn't even really get close to because there was just some kind of an aura that I believe God gave to me. So I knew that that person was not a safe person to be around.
What if you were to start writing down a list of good qualities in people? If you have something to write on, let's do some of that right now.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, how much, well, let's do that first. What are some good qualities?
Honesty.
Honesty would be one. I think I have that one down here someplace, I think. Another one that I had down here is empathy.
Yes.
The ability to put yourself in someone else's place and as much as you can think the way they do, not take that on, but at least understand. Honesty is another one. Someone else have one? A good quality. Self-awareness.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. What others do you have? Good qualities.
Respect.
Respect. I think I have that one down too. Hmm.
Self-awareness.
Another one I have down is listening skills.
Listening. Is what?
Listening skills.
Yes.
Generosity. Anybody out there got another one? Loyalty.
That's good.
See, now when you think of those, that one is important to you.
Yeah.
So if you start making this list, then you think, well, that friend or that my spouse doesn't have enough of that one, but they have a lot of that one, so that will counter. It's not either or, because we're all on a gradation here, right?
Right.
A continuation, yes. Respect. One of the ones I put down is take personal responsibility.
Yeah, that's big. Take responsibility. I like that.
100%. Everything you say, do, think, and feel is your responsibility. Now, we live in a culture where the power is in being a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can be a victim, then I have more power in a culture that likes to, elect people who want to have victims, because there's a lot of power in that. But to take full responsibility. So that one for me is like way up there at the top of whatever I would want in a good quality. Then I can start saying, well, that friend there has about 50% in that direction, and that's enough or it isn't enough. But maybe in my list of 11, he doesn't have half of them. I don't know. What kind of a friend is that? It isn't black or white, either or, up or down, but I think it's up to you to know what you think of as a bad person for you, and what you can live with and what you're not willing to. And then, of course, getting other people's opinions.
Right.
But I don't know if this one was based on marriage as much as it's just
In general.
general.
Mhm.
And there are people that we probably should help exit from our lives who are not
Yes.
good for us.
Yes. That's a good way to
Yeah.
put it. Help exit from our lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes those
Go
people are
ahead.
the ones who want most to be in your life,
Yeah.
and they tend to be clingy,
Uh-huh.
and it's not easy to exit that person
Mhm.
out of our life.
Yeah. Because of the culture we live in, it's gotten worse.
Mhm.
But how many people do you have in your life who use you as a rescuer?
Mhm.
How many? And their victimhood is the attraction you find in them,
Hmm.
because you can rescue them, or vice versa.
That is
And when you
very
see
good.
that in a married couple, that can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Then you start mind reading and accusing because you're not doing enough to make me successful, or whatever.
Yeah. That's very good. You can hand this to Jim, because we'll start with him on this next one. Number 4. Why does it seem that women are more organized than men?
Oh, thank you.
You wanted
Let me see if I can organize myself.
Right.
Well, I think part of the question is a little thing that I bumped into. There's a biological part of this answer, and it's that men and women's brains and the interconnections between them develop at different rates. Among men, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are connected by a large amount of connections earlier in life, whereas for women, they have a smaller number of interconnections. Why does that matter? If you're right-handed, your left hemisphere handles rational thinking, rational thought. Your right hemisphere is the creative side. So let's say you're working in an office somewhere and a problem comes up. So you're looking at it with your left hemisphere, which is your rational thought, and you're breaking it down into sections that have to be solved before you can take care of this problem. You consult your right hemisphere for creative ideas. If you have a lot of connections, you're going back and forth really fast.
Between both hemispheres.
If you have fewer connections, your brain kind of shuts down. So I can, on several occasions, I've heard young women say, "I'm such an airhead." Well, that's what it is. You come back 20 years later, and they're killing their job.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, men are phasing out age 50, 60 because the number of connections that they have decreases. That's part of this question. And I'll leave it to my colleagues here to finish it all.
That's very, very insightful. Biological aspect going on. Interesting. Go ahead. David Hernandez in our group said it's much simpler than that. Men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. I like that analogy. That's a good.
I like that, and that addressed part of what I had in my response, and that is that God created us specifically to be different, to need each other. And He created us so that we complement each other. For instance, physically, you have explained in the brain. Physically, you can't have children unless you've got a male and a female. Now, some people today are trying to question that, but the fact of the matter is, if you can have a baby, you're a woman. If you can't have a baby, you're a man. But the two together can have one. And I believe that was part of God's purpose for us, that we be different so we can complement each other. In fact, there is a doctor by the name of Donald Joy who has written a book called Bonding Relationships in the Image of God. And in his bonding book, one of the things that he points out is that we are different physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And in each area, we can complement each other. We have a different amount of whatever it takes in that area to have a compatible relationship. And he goes so far as to say, anytime you have a single sex decision-making group, you have an imbalanced decision-making group. It takes both the male and the female to see the whole picture. And if you try to make a decision, just the husband or just the wife, then your decision may not be quite as good as it would be if the two of you were working together. Now, obviously, there are times we have single people here. And God, if we ask Him, will supply our needs when we have to make a decision by ourselves. But I really think this organization idea is more complicated than it really looks like. That it's not just mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. It takes all of them together. And because of that, it takes both men and women.
That's good. Man, these are good.
Yeah, I don't know that there's that big of a difference, really. I mean, as far as one's more organized than the other, it depends. Are you talking about the kitchen or the garage?
The kitchen or the garage.
They complement.
The idea that one, some women are more organized than some men, and vice versa. But I've never seen any real proof that women are more organized about life in general than men. I mean, it depends on the personality and the approach to life, and again, maybe the kitchen is more organized than the garage, or not. Maybe it's the other way around. So. I just never understood that as a big. I think it's confirmation bias again. That's what I think a lot of that is. That doesn't mean women and women aren't different, but to say one's more organized than others, never been anything I've witnessed.
Yeah.
Some are, and more than others, but
What we're born with or what we're trained in.
I think a lot of it's nurture and
Environment.
personality types.
And
stuff,
personality. Huh. Very good. Very good. Okay. Question number 5. We have 3 more to go. Question number 5. When the occupations of a couple separates them for an extended period of time across oceans and continents, how does the relationship sustain its life after words of encouragement, acts of service, and gift giving, which, by the way, is limited to just male, after those things run out? How does the relationship sustain itself when the occupation of a couple separates them for an extended period of time across oceans and continents? And they've tried words of encouragement, acts of service, gift giving through the mail. When that runs out, what do you do?
I do have something for whoever this person is. A letter from my wife 2 years before she died, when she knew that she had incurable cancer and wanted to settle our relationship. I would be willing to share that with you for one reason, and that is that it gives you a goal to search for. So you can see how it would be at the end of your life and make it a reality now in the middle of your life.
Huh.
So
Wow.
if whoever this person is, if you'll come up to me, I'll be glad to give it to you.
I have a question. What impressed you by that letter? Can you share just a little bit with us without, or is the letter too long to?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about our marriage so you get some idea of what's in the letter, but we were total opposites. And the only thing that brought us together in the first place was that I had found myself 12 years divorced, and it had been a long time since I had met anyone who was a possible mate. And I realized it's not happening. Every time I've tried to set something up with anyone, they turned out to be not a possibility. And so after 12, 13 years, I said, one day I just surrendered to God because he's the only one left.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, God, it's been 13 years. Everything I've tried is wrong. I give up. You choose for me. And here's what I want. And this is how I'll know she's the one. I want someone my age, a redhead, someone of my intellectual level, someone of my educational level, someone who grew up not too far away from me, no cross-cultural difficulties. That's 5. I ended up with 10. At the moment, they don't all come up, but you get the idea.
Yeah, you had a list.
Okay, so
Yeah, she
2
was
weeks
Jewish.
later, I injured my back and went to see a doctor, and he said, well, you need to see a physical therapist. Okay, I walk into the physical therapist, and there she was. I was totally unimpressed, but she had red hair. Okay, so I had therapy from her, and so I was impressed because she just from examining me, she made a diagnosis, and apparently my doctor didn't have a diagnosis. So she showed me on my second visit a letter from the doctor said, yes, Connie, good diagnosis. That's exactly what's wrong with him. I was impressed.
Uh-huh. Same intellectual
So-
level, yeah.
After therapy ended, I was better, took a chance. We dated. It was a surprisingly good date. 2 or 3 more items on my list popped up. Eventually, within a couple of months, I realized, holy mother, she has touched on all 10 items. So then the scientist in me got interested. What are the probabilities? And it comes out to something like 3.5 times 10 to the ninth. That's a 10 with 9 zeros behind it. It's like millions of, it's like there aren't that many people in the world. Okay?
Right, right.
So the only solution is it's God. It has to be God.
Yeah.
So then I realized, well, wait a minute now. I'm trapped. I have to take her because everything that I asked for, he gave me. What am I going to do now? Say, hey, this woman you gave me is no good. So we began with total opposites. And eventually, you know, it was chaos at first. Eventually, we worked our way through for 12 years, and we just realized we've gone as far as we can go, but this isn't enough. We have to do something different. And, you know, I married her after 6 months of biting my lip. I don't know if I can be responsible for this much. And she was way out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up on the same page, studying the Torah. And that's the roots of Christianity. So now I'm kind of an interfaith person now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank
It's
you.
all the same. I see both sides.
Right.
And so, like, to me, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, the Creator, Yehovah, God, all the same.
Mm-hmm. Thank
It's
you.
all the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're all tied together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, because really it's the goal at the end that you're appealing to.
Yeah, so the only thing that ended our marriage was cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you know, so we had 25 good years.
Amen.
When we first got married, neither one of us thought we had a chance, but God was in it. That's my hope.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. It's a testimony too. If you want more details, approach Jim, because it is a miracle that they stayed together. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Lambright.
So the essence of this question is a couple that's trying to keep a marriage together long distance.
Right.
Isn't that what?
Yes. For extended periods of time.
Which is not unusual in some military families.
Right.
Then
How do you keep the marriage from dying when it's just constant?
They apparently know that each other's love languages is in the way it's written.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard
To
one.
have
It's
a-
a legitimately hard
To
question.
have a thriving marriage
Right.
where, I mean, people make it happen. And of course, now we have ability to see each other on computers. And
Right.
Talk. I don't know how people did it decades and decades ago. I don't know. I think that intentionality is one of my favorite words. You have to be more intentional if you're going to have a thriving marriage in the same house.
So it has to
But-
be in the same house, much less across an
I
ocean.
would say more intense
Uh-huh.
intentionality
Uh-huh.
in order to find a way to make each other, because if you can't touch each other,
Right.
you can't, but you can see each other.
Right.
You can hear each other. But apparently the questioner is saying we're running out of approaches because
Options. Uh-huh.
we know what each other likes, but I think part of that is asking yourself, is this approach to living a good way to be married?
Right.
Now, sometimes you're married and then this happens,
Right.
but sometimes you may have to say, well, this isn't a lifestyle I can keep if I'm going to be married. So no, I won't take that promotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Legitimate. Mm-hmm.
That's a really hard one. I asked my son Steve about that one also, and he said one of the things that he thought was important is to understand each other's love language. And there are a number of books written on that so that you can find out what each other's love language is. One of the things that I put down is that my husband and I were separated a lot in our business to begin with when the kids were young. And we found that we argued more after we got back together than we ever did when we were together for long periods of time. And when I started thinking about it, I realized that part of the reason was because when we're separated from each other, we are decision making alone. We are growing alone. We are doing everything that we do on an everyday life alone. And then we're coming back together and expecting that person to be the same person. And they aren't, and neither are we. And so what I wrote down was the possibility of journaling every day. Relationship takes time and you're not spending time together. So if you journal every day and in your journal, you put the decisions that you had to make by yourself. If you can't make it with the other person, you put in what you learned in your devotions, what happened during the day, ways that you were affected by what happened during the day. And then if you are not in a position where you can send this information back and forth to each other, save it until they get home. And then when they get home, you can each share each other's journal, and you will see where the other person has maybe grown or made a decision you wouldn't make, or whatever it is, you would see where that person is growing on a daily basis. Other than that, I think sharing spiritually is important in that journaling. But share your goals and expectations of what you would like to see happen when that person gets back, that you can do with them, that would maybe be speaking in their love language.
That's good. That's good.
In this case, he or she is asking, after words of encouragement, acts of service, gift giving have run out. So apparently they've tried that. I wonder if they would be a happy couple if they were in the same house. I don't know that.
Right. That's a legitimate
But
question.
it's an honest question. I don't
Yeah.
know how people in centuries before us have made this all happen. The expectations were different.
Right.
That is part of it. Yeah.
Right.
How do you stay married in a happy relationship? When it says there are oceans between us and continents,
It's not easy.
I think
That
the
is-
expectations are different than they would have been 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe because you can see each other, but that's all we can do. We can't touch each other.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. And the journaling could be email kind of thing.
Yeah.
And okay. Oh, go ahead. You had another comment?
Yeah, also nowadays, my daughter is very close to me, but for a long time she wasn't, and far away. In other words,
Geographically. Yeah.
not close. And so we settled on Marco Polo.
Marco Polo.
And the nice thing about Marco Polo is you've got a video of the person there, and you don't have to. You're not on the phone with them. You can read it whenever you want. You can reply whenever you want, and make your own video back and forth to each other. They can look at it in their time, and
Wow.
And so-
Technology.
yeah, it's called
It's
Marco Polo.
Marco Polo is a
It's on
program
your
on the-
cell phone.
Oh, that's cool. It's an app.
Yes.
That's very cool. Huh. Yeah,
Marco
that might be helpful.
Polo.
Marco Polo. That's cute. I like it.
Like the game, the water polo
Right.
game.
Uh-huh. Or when I'm
That's-
in the grocery store and I hear a mom,
I'm out of
Marco,
words now.
and I hear a child,
I've said my
Polo.
1,200 words for the day, so I'm out.
I love it. Thank you. All right. Number 6. Are there ways to know if someone is manipulating you? Go ahead, Mom, since you're passing it off. You go first.
I'm capping it off.
You're passing the microphone off, so you get to go first.
Oh, that wasn't fair. I didn't know the boundaries. I just wanted to say that I think manipulation is very damaging to
into a relationship because it's a way of trying to control somebody else's behavior by touching on their feelings or emotions, what they know or what they don't know. And to me, a person who is manipulative and does that cannot be trusted because you may not always get the truth. It might be a white lie, it might be some half story or whatever. But to me, probably the biggest way people use to manipulate is lying or not telling the whole truth. And no relationship can survive when you can't trust. I mean, any love relationship, it doesn't matter whether it's a husband, wife, or what it is, has to have the element of trust. And if you can't trust that person, then the relationship is extremely damaged. And I have down a whole list. I won't even read the whole list, but let me just tell you some of the ways that people use to manipulate. They twist reality. They bully. They blame. They don't take responsibility for their own behavior. They change the criteria. They gaslight. They are overly complimentary. I never thought about
Flattering.
that. Flattering, overly they play the victim. They blackmail. They guilt trip. They selectively show affections, and in that you might say they use sex to control. They exaggerate. They gift give to make people feel obligated. They are dishonest. They withhold information.
On and on.
On and on and on and on. I just think that that is a characteristic that if you see in somebody, they're not safe.
Yes.
I think you already gave us the list. No, it is about power and control.
Yeah. It is power and control. That's it.
Yeah. And it's good for us to recognize when we're being confronted with that, because sometimes we don't recognize that. And so that's good. Number 7, did you have something? Go ahead.
Well, just thought I might add there. So the overall solution is to know your needs,
Right.
have boundaries.
That's good.
Yes. That's important.
In essence, nobody controls me unless I let them.
Yep.
Now, I could be ignorant and not. It may take me a while to realize, hey, I'm being manipulated here. And gaslighting and love bombing, some people call it, well, you're the most wonderful thing in the world. I can't live without you, blah, blah, blah. And it's a way to control you, whatever. But at some point, self-awareness, knowing your needs, knowing how to ask for them, having appropriate boundaries, which are different than walls, to know where you start and someone else stops. Very important.
Very good. Thank you.
I agree totally with that. In fact, it reminds me of the old Harvard Business School thing, the monkey's on your back.
The monkey's on your back. That's
Have you heard of that? So basically, it's a problem that they've tried to feed the monkey and never really never solved the problem. So now they're going to get you to feed their monkey.
Huh.
Don't let anybody give you a monkey to feed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Yeah, it's control. Yeah, all right. Number 7 and the last one before we open it up, if any of you have any additional insights, I'm so interested in this. Number 7, I'm struggling with depression, but I can't get therapy or medications right now. Is there anything else I can do that might help? I'm struggling with depression, but I can't get therapy or medications right now. Okay, he's got a list on this one. I like
This would
it.
be a good start for people that really know the answer. So everything comes up number 1, exercise.
Yes.
Walking is probably the easiest form of exercise. Try to get morning light and evening light during the golden hours.
That's good.
It is good for your brain. 10 minutes of golden light in your eyes is enough. Number 2, have social connections, but not on social media.
I agree.
Face to
Oh, my
face
goodness.
with someone.
Yes.
Number
agree.
3, get your vitamin D level checked.
Mm-hmm.
Take D3,
Mm-hmm.
but be careful not to take too much of it because it is toxic.
Yes.
Number 4, if you are eating processed foods, the microbiome needed in your gut and your mouth to digest food will suffer. Try eating foods that your grandparents ate,
Yeah, that's good.
single foods.
Yeah.
In a grocery store, 80 to 90% of the food for sale is processed.
Yeah.
A potato, an apple, a salad is not processed by some manufacturers' machines.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, find your purpose. What do you have a passion for?
Uh-huh.
Try to exploit that.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been trying to make a success in a world where you only use the left side of your brain to solve problems rationally, and that's not working for you, look for activities that you do with your right hemisphere, where you do something creative and artistic. And if that's where your strengths are, go for it there. Give up trying to work out a life for yourself that's based on anybody else's expectations.
That's good. That's good.
And find time to actively enjoy praise music,
Yes.
even if you sing to yourself. And if you do, you will not be alone for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
This is a mental tool that each of us can use to welcome the presence of the Holy Spirit,
Uh-huh.
Jehovah, Jesus, into our hearts and minds. And how does it work? It's very simple. God inhabits the praises of his people. Surrender to your praise.
That's good.
Excellent.
Man. Excellent.
No, go ahead. This is.
Yeah. Yeah, he handed it out.
Okay, everybody's got one?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that yes, there is a way out. And for those of you that just got a handout, this is something that I printed out of Dr. Neil Nedley's book, Depression, The Way Out. This is the book. And the reason I know about it is because my husband experienced extreme depression. What brought it on was he thought we were going bankrupt. And there were other issues involved because this was a business. It wasn't just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And he became very depressed to the point where he knew he had to do something. He had heard of Dr. Neil Nedley, who does seminars, and those seminars are like 10 to 18 days long. And he wasn't sure he could even take that much time off of the business because of the situation that we were in. So he wrote to Dr. Nedley and asked him if he would send him information. He sent to him the copy of this book, Depression, The Way Out. He sent to him a workbook and videos. And there were 10 videos of the seminar. Ed and I watched those videos. I watched them with him 4 times. He went through the book. He shared with me what all he did the videos probably 10 times. And he still felt the need to go to the seminar. So he went to the seminar and went through the long, and I'm thinking it was 10 or 12 days. I don't remember now.
It was at least that. I have in my head it was like 3 weeks.
It might have been the 18-day
Yeah.
seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And in this seminar, they deal with what they call hits. And everybody can be hit with different items that will cause them to be depressed. On the next page that you see are listed the 10 hits that possibly cause depression. There could be more, but these are the ones that Dr. Nedley had identified. They're genetic hits. This is something that you might inherit from your family. Developmental hits when you were a child, nutrition, how you're eating, social, your relationships with other people, toxic, things that you might be addicted to, your circadian rhythm, how you sleep, and what you do on a regular schedule, your eating meals and everything, addictions, medical conditions, and the frontal lobe being affected, because a person whose frontal lobe has been damaged becomes a different person. And they know that scientifically. So Dr. Nedley identified these 10 hits, and he also identified the fact that if you have 3 hit categories, you probably will be okay. A hit category is especially a category that you cannot control. For instance, you can't control your genetics. That's something you have no control over. But most of these are hits that you can control. He said if you have 4 hit categories, chances are you will sustain some type of depression or mental illness. If you have 5 hits out of this category, you definitely will be depressed. He said there's no way from stopping it. There are medications you can take for depression. When my husband went to this, he was told that there were 1 or 2 medications that one of them he was on, that he had to be off of before they would accept him into the depression seminar. And so he got off of that medication and he went to the seminar. On the next page, well, first of all, they said there are singular hits that will cause depression. Thyroid disease, Parkinson's, you can go down through that list yourself. On the next page are the 10 hits and things in that category.
Hold the microphone to your mouth.
Things in that category that qualify as a hit. And some of these are interrelated. For instance, the addiction hit category. You will find things down in the medical condition that might be an addiction that you have had to take a medication and became addicted to. But you will see that there are things in each category that can cause us to have a hit from that category. And if you have 5 hits or more, yes, you will be depressed and you may need help and medication to get through it. I will say that my husband almost got all the way through it just by going through the videos and the book by himself. And the doctor even asked him, are you sure you need to be here? And Ed told him yes, he was sure he needed to be there. He went through the whole 18 days, and when he came home, I noticed some changes. And one of them was he would start to say something negative, and he would stop mid-sentence and change that sentence to something positive. He was changing his thinking. Instead of thinking I'm going bankrupt, he was thinking, I think if we do this, we can make a little bit more to pull us through. And so I watched him more than once stop mid-sentence and change his thinking. And to me, this probably is the biggest thing that we have to deal with if you're going to try to deal with it on your own. My suggestion would be if you have 5 or more hits that you do get help, because usually medically, especially if you've been depressed for 2 years or longer, your body has quit or started producing hormones and chemicals that your body needs to change.
Yeah.
And it affects, Dr. Nedley said Ed needed to go off of it because it affected his thinking and how he would handle the things he was told to do at the seminar.
So he went off of it. He went to the seminar and came back a changed person. And I have to say that when he got done with this seminar, it was just a couple of years later, he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. And even during that diagnosis and knowing that it was terminal, he did not become depressed. But he followed what they told him to do very carefully. So if you can't go to a seminar, can't talk to Dr. Nedley, I would suggest you get his book. I put the information on the last page, the appendix page. And on that page, I included that because it has 17 harmful effects of watching TV. And I'd like to say that those effects include our telephones
And social
and
media.
doing YouTube. And I'm speaking from experience here. I kind of have an addiction to playing solitaire. So I have to really be careful not to pick that phone up every time I'm got a break or I'm bored, and try to think of something more constructive to do. So these are just materials. The Dr. Nedley address on the back says Weimar Institute. When my husband went, he went to the clinic that was in Oklahoma. Dr. Nedley was called to go to Weimar University, I think it is now, and he is presently president of that school. And they do these seminars at the school now. They are costly, but they are worth every penny if you value your mental health.
It's good. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and she's right. I mean, I kept waiting. I know the kids and I talked about it. We kept waiting for Grandpa to tank when he was diagnosed and he knew he was going to die, and he just didn't. I kept waiting for that shoe to drop, and it didn't. Right up until he took his last breath. I mean, it was just, God is faithful. He was so diligent. He had just retrained his mental thinking. Go ahead. Dr. Lambright, did you have anything to add?
A couple things. Be careful that you don't feel a sense of shame.
Right.
Because depression is kind of the common cold of mental disorders.
Yes.
And essentially everybody will have some episodes of that. Sometimes it's diagnosable, sometimes it's isn't.
That's very important.
Yeah.
One of the major ways of working with depression and anxiety, because they often come together, is with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think this would be Freud, but there's some truth to it, I think, even if it is Freud. Even a clock is right at least twice a day. That's a lot of, not always, but a lot of times I think depression is anger turned inward, which requires some real introspection of what's underneath it.
Interesting.
Now, but the questioner here is saying, I don't have any funds to go get counseling or meds, so what are some practical things we can do? Well, a book like this might be worth buying, and then also go online, and if you look up cognitive distortions, you'll find lists of 8 or 10 of them. Cognitive distortions. It's a way of retraining the way you think about things so that you filter things differently. Some of them on the list will be catastrophizing, discounting the positive, black and white thinking, mind reading, filtering, filtering out the positive. Those are 4 or 5 of the 8 or 10 that are the core ones. But this is what we call stinking thinking.
That's good. Stinking thinking.
Automatic negative thoughts, ants. And if you catch yourself and then you retrain yourself and realize, how can I think about that different? A lot of depression is based on falsehoods. But to you, they make perfect sense. But when you begin to name that, oh, that right there, I was discounting the positive. That's what that's called. Then you can call yourself out and make an intentional choice
Uh-huh.
to look at that differently.
Uh-huh.
Um,
That's
I tell
so good.
clients automatic negative thoughts, ants, but let's get to apps.
Uh-huh.
Automatic positive thoughts.
Uh-huh.
And let's change, but that CBT won't work unless you work it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I give them this list that you could find online and say, okay, now come back next week, catch yourself having lived out.
Uh-huh.
Maybe there are 3 or 4 or 5 core ones that you live with
Uh-huh.
that because they kind of overlap. But depression and anxiety is pretty common in our culture. It's not new, but I do think it's gotten worse. And part of it is some of the things you listed. We can be on our cell phones and checked out, and we can stay up all night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have an awful lot of dismay in our culture that because we can listen to news broadcasts all night long and all day long.
True.
And we too much information without the ability to do anything
Uh-huh.
leads to anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, information without agency. I have all this information, but I don't have any way to fix it, and you don't.
Right. Right.
Leads to depression and anxiety. Where our forefathers and mothers didn't have quite that. It was different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very good.
If I can just add one more thing. One of the categories that is given in this list that has television, the effects of television, is that it keeps us from reacting to things that if it happened in real life, we would react to. If a person is drowning, we would react and want to go help them. But on television, you don't do that. You
Sit
are
and
not
watch.
able to
Yeah.
do that. Right. And I think that's something that's really important for us to recognize, is that it dulls our senses and it causes us to not respond the way God originally intended our emotions and feelings to be. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and it's really fast, I asked my son Steve again on the telephone. He said that there is, what do you call it when you have the first letter of a word? Acronym. An acronym that triggers addictions. And sometimes because of that, then it would be depression. And that acronym is HALT. And he said these are things that would cause us to respond differently than we would if we were not in depression or experiencing difficulty with addiction. And that is, H is hungry, A is angry, L is lonely, and T is tired. And he said any one of those 4 things can trigger an addiction or a response to depression.
Very good. Very good. You guys, this has been great. And actually, it's gone faster than I thought. I mean, it is almost 1. And those of you joining us online, I'm so proud of you for staying with us. Thank you. Something I heard on the radio just talking about TV, and I think this applies to social media as well. I heard on the radio just this week, Matthew McConaughey's mom. You guys know who Matthew McConaughey is, the actor. His mom said no TV. She said, I'm not going to let you sit and watch somebody else do what you could go out and see if you can do it. Great logic. I'm not going to sit and let you watch somebody else do what you could go out and see if you can do it yourself. In other words, TV, the lack of TV makes you the subject of your own life rather than everybody else is the subject of your life. we watch somebody else do their lives. They are the subjects when we can be the subject. And this is what this was on Christian radio, and the announcers were dialoguing about this. I don't need to watch somebody else have relationships and community. I can have relationships and host my own parties. I don't need to watch, and granted, those are fun. Let's live our lives fully, the life that God has given us. I want to, at this time, I would like to open it to the audience. Is there anybody who has something else to add to any of these conversations that we had? Any thoughts that have come to you? I'm super interested. Go. Okay, hold on.
Okay. At this moment, I don't have anything to add, but I did want to ask this question that my husband and I often talk about because we don't really know the answer to it, and it's this: that apparently statistics today show that Christian marriages dissolve while secular marriages keep it together. And so what is your response to that, and why you think that is in today's culture?
That's interesting, because one of the notes I made here is that in marrying somebody that the statistics show that 50% of non-Christian marriages end up in divorce, as do 50% of Christian marriages. My thought is, I wonder how many of those Christian marriages were of the same faith. Because to me, I think that would make a difference, because I believe religion is very important in the family. And if religion is important to one or the other, if they are not of the same faith, even though they are both Christians, then the divorce rate might be just as high as it is in non-Christian homes.
I have a little personal experience that I'd like to share. My wife and I conducted Marriage Ministries International group sessions. We took it ourselves and loved it. And so in the end, we had about 23 couples that came through our group one time or another over a period of years. And so when when N equals 23, now I can do statistics. Well, simple statistic. Half of them got divorces and half of them were still married. This was an intensive course. It was probably 3 months every week. And then I realized, oh, okay, I get it. Half of the couples came to the group for the same reason that Connie and I did, which is we had good marriages and we wanted to make them better. The other half were in trouble, and they came hoping, that it would be resolved. It was resolved. They went their separate ways. That's because, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I give life. I take breath away. I give breath. Everything has a beginning and an end. Their marriages were over. They weren't supposed to, one of them was not being a spouse anymore, if not both of them. So that's my 2 cents.
Did we not? I'm not sure that I answered the question. Did you understand it the same way?
Were you saying that more Christian marriages are ending in divorce than non-Christian? That's what I thought you were saying. I didn't know that was true, but I don't think that's true. But.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to get the source of that statistic, because that is a particular research project that contradicts other research projects that say that Christian marriages and non-Christian marriages have the same divorce rate, 50%.
Maybe possibly it's because we're human, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you're Christian or not, if all of these other aspects are not being paid attention to. If you're not making sure you have the same goals and expectations, it doesn't matter if you're Christian or not. It's going to take a toll on your marriage. If you don't know your needs, you don't know how to ask for them, et cetera, it's not necessarily, well, if you're Christian, everything is going to be hunky dory, because we know that's not true. We're humans, and there's a higher, I would think, a better chance as a Christian if you are both including God diligently and intentionally, that God will help you work through the other stuff. But if you're not working through the other stuff and you're not cooperating with God, then you're going to have the same divorce rate.
Connie, that was absolutely valid. Absolutely valid. And I appreciated you pointing that out, because I've seen research that says if a couple, not just Christian couples, but among Christian couples who read the Bible every day together, they have this radically lesser percentage chance of divorce if they read the Bible together every day. I've seen several studies that said that too. So I think it depends what you're looking at, because honestly, I think there's hope out there for every marriage if they're willing to fight for it. I really do. Any other comments on anything else? Brad, did you have something? Did I feel like you had something? Okay.
So just going back to the whole opposites attract thing, I think it's really important to recognize that there's like compatibility in so many different areas, and it's good to like have compatibility initially, but humans are so much more complex. You know, it's not just like black or white when it comes to this kind of stuff, especially like, you know, there's not like one kind of person and then an exact opposite. There's going to be so many different areas where people are going to be compatible, but then there's going to be areas where they're not, you know? And so it's like, it's important to like want to find compatibility, but then also being able to create compatibility throughout the relationship, you know? Like being willing to grow, being willing to change, you know, but like also in that, having differences in the two people can be so complementary in the relationship as well. And like just some things that I wrote down, like different skills. There are some skills Johanna has that I don't, and I'm so grateful that she has them. You know, one of those being that she's organized. One of those being that she can research stuff like nobody's business, and I'm like, I can't find this information, but she can find it like that. Different perspectives on different things. You know, it's so easy for people to, like when they're single, when they're just by themselves, to think that their perspective is the only right one. But, you know, now that I have Johanna here, like I can go to her and be like, what do you think about this? What is your perspective? Because I recognize that in the way that I'm thinking about certain things or the way I'm viewing it. So having a different perspective is a blessing, you know? And then different interests, like I'm sure everybody here knows that Johanna absolutely loves horses. I grew up in the city. Yeah, she does. Yeah. I grew up in the city. So like I have ridden a horse before a couple times, but I didn't know a whole lot about that. But getting to know her more about but also I think what one of the things that attracted me to her was that I was willing to learn more about something she loved. You know, same with me in baseball. I loved baseball growing up. She hated it at one point, but then like I explained her the rules. We went to a couple games, and now she loves it. You know, and so it's just like not necessarily trying to find somebody that's like opposite of you, but somebody that can like where their differences can complement you, and then also being able and willing to create compatibility by allowing yourself to grow and change.
Okay, this has been so good. Any other comments, thoughts? Wow. We had a comment that I'll just read out loud since he's not here. It's from Douglas. And he said, excellent and helpful thoughts, advice with much wisdom. Appreciated very much hearing the varied gems of point of view from three deep thinking people of God. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah. So, Douglas, we're sorry you couldn't make it here in person, but thankful you dialed in online, and everybody else who's joining us online. I just wanted to conclude with a gem that I found in Colossians chapter 3. And I feel like we did that here today. What this verse talks about. Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 to 16. Or 17. No, 16. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly beloved, clothe yourselves with feelings of compassion and with kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with one another. If anyone has a complaint against someone else, forgive him. Indeed, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must forgive. Above all these things, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together perfectly. And let the shalom, the peace, which comes from the Messiah, Christ, be your heart's decision maker. For this is why you were called to be part of a single body. And be thankful. Let the word of the Messiah in all its richness live in you as you teach and counsel each other in all wisdom. Teach and counsel each other in all wisdom. That's what we've done here today. I'm thrilled with the amount of useful information that we have shared here at church. This is so appropriate for church. So the richness of the Messiah live in you as you teach and counsel each other in all wisdom, and as you sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratitude to God in your hearts. That is, everything you do or say, do in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks through him to God the Father. So I just want to thank you all again. You were just so incredibly insightful, full of wisdom, which I knew we had there. See, it's just a matter of delving into it and hearing from them, picking their brains. It's just, I'm interested. If you guys are, you let me know. I'm interested in doing this again. And if you guys are willing, or other people out here in the audience, if you're willing, we can collect another series of questions. We had more questions come in than we were able to address today. And we'll do this again in a few months, but this has been really, really helpful. And I just want to encourage us here to just cover everything we do with love. And we can't do that without Christ in our hearts. We cannot love and forgive each other. We cannot have compassion with each other if we don't have Christ in our hearts. So I just want to encourage each of you today to welcome the Holy Spirit, welcome the Lord, welcome Jesus Christ, the Savior, into your life. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his bright smiling countenance upon you and give you his shalom. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This concludes Hope Bible Fellowship's June 22 worship service. Thank you to all of you who joined us online and all of you here in person.